Welcome back. Let's continue with building our cat photo wrap. So far we've made a whole lot of progress, and in this video we're going to continue from where we left off, which is step 50. So we're going to continue with step 51 to 60. All right, so let's look at what we call the legend element. The legend element acts as a caption for the content in the field set element. It gives users context about what they should enter into that part of the form. Okay, so when we go to the finished app, as you can see, we have this thing here that sort of give some context as to what this indoor and outdoor radio buttons are. So this right here is what we call the legend. So it's a legend element. So the way you add it to your form is to just use the opening legend like so, and then use the closing legend like so. So I'll cut this and add it to the ending parts like so. So from there you can, okay, so wait, add a legend element to the text. Is your cat an indoor or outdoor cat? Above. Okay, so we should do it above both radios. So yeah, it's supposed to be here. So we have the opening and the closing, and then in between you just add what you want to add. An indoor or outdoor cat. Okay, so now we are giving more context to the indoor versus the outdoor, right? So you have an idea of what this indoor and outdoor means, so you know which one to select. So you see, it looks similar to what we have here. Okay, let's continue. All right, next up we want to add some more new form input element. So we'll add another field set directly below the current field set we have. So this is the current field set, and we're going to go ahead and add a new field set. So we have the opening and the closing field set. Okay, just below the previous one that we have, because when you see here we have this guy here and we also have this guy below it. So that's what we want to do. This guy, the personality guy. Okay, so add a legend element with the text "What's your cat's personality?" inside the second field set. So we add another legend like so, and the text we want to use for the legend is "What's your cat's personality?" Okay, so as you can see we have the legend here. Next up we want to add the inputs. Okay, so forms commonly use checkboxes for questions that may have one or more answers. For example, here's a checkbox with the option tacos. So you have a text tacos here, and then we have the inputs elements, and then we have a type with a value of checkbox. So now under the legend which we have here, we want to add a new input with its type attribute set to checkbox, and give it the option of loving. Okay, so the way we do that is to add an input. Remember, inputs are self-closing, and then what we want to do is we want to give it a type attributes of checkbox. So as you can see, we have our checkbox here. Then we have to give it a text. So the text we give it is 11. Okay. Now add an ID attribute with a value 11 to the input checkbox. So we just add a new attribute. Once again, how do we add an attribute? We do so by writing name of attributes like so, and then value of the attribute. Okay, so in this case, the name of the attribute we want to add is ID, not NID. ID, and the value is loving, LOVING. All right, so on to the next one. There's another way to associate an input element text with the element itself. You can nest the text within a label element and add a for attribute with the same value as the input element ID attribute. So we just want to add a label to this guy here. So label, we need an opening, and then we also need a closing. Okay, and what we also want to do is inside this label, we want to give it a for attribute. So for attribute, and the value of the for attribute, we want it to be equal to this 11 here. Okay, so it's just a way for us to associate this label with this input we have here, right? Okay, so now this label here and this input are associated. Okay, so when you click on 11, it checks this. You don't need to come here and click this little box. Okay, you can click on the text itself and it will check it. All right. Okay, so there's something wrong. The text 11 should be wrapped in a label element. Okay, so yeah, but text 11. Okay, so let's see. Okay, let's see what happens if we do this. Oh, okay, so yeah, here's something important to take note of. So we can either wrap this input with label, okay, like we did here. So over here, let me go up for a minute. So over here, as you can see, we have a label element, okay, and inside that label element, we have an input element. Okay, so the difference between that and this one is that this one, with this one, we have the input element and then we have our label element. The input, unlike this one, where you have the input element nested within the label element, with this one, the input element is not nested within this element. It's standing on its own. And then this label element is also standing on its own. But we are using the for attributes, which has a value of the same thing as the ID attribute here. Okay, so let's make this more clear. So assuming we remove this, okay, And let me come here. Just a minute. Okay, so assuming I just have label. Okay, now when I click this checkbox isn't checked. Okay, but if I should add a label, even let's see this. If I add a label without the 4 attributes and I click it, it still isn't checked, right? But once I add a 4 attribute, okay, once I add a 4 attribute which has the same value as the ID of this input, then when I click it, it is checked. Okay, yeah, so take note of that. Okay, so next up, we want to add a name attribute with the value personality to the input checkbox element. Okay, while you won't notice this in the browser, doing this makes it easier for a server to process your web form, because especially when there are multiple checkboxes. Okay, so we want to add a name attribute like so, and the value of the name attribute is going to be personality. Okay, so we have our input element and we have added a new attribute called name, and the value of this new attribute name is personality. Okay, so we want to add another checkbox after the one you just added. Okay, so let me slide this to the right so that we see exactly what we are doing. Okay, so we want to add another input element, right? And the input is a self-closing tag. So we want to give it an ID attribute. This time around, the ID attribute should be lazy. Okay, and we want to give it, of course, the type should be a checkbox, and then we're also going to give it a name attribute of so the name attribute should be the same as that of the last checkbox. Okay, in this case personality, so personality. Yeah, also add a label element to the right of the checkbox with the text lazy. Okay, so we add our label element, opening label tag, closing label tag, and then the text we want to use is lazy. Okay, make sure to associate the label element with a new checkbox using the 4 attributes. Okay, so once again, let me demonstrate this. So you see now we have this lazy element here. When we click this, nothing happens because we haven't associated it with this input. But with this one, we've associated it with this input. So when you click this, it checks. Okay, so we want to do the same for the lazy label so that when we click it, it automatically checks the checkbox. All right, the way we do that, as we did before, is to add a 4 attribute, and the value of this 4 attribute is going to be the same as this ID here, lazy. So I'll just copy and paste. Now let's check it out. When we click here, it automatically checks just the same way as this works. All right. Okay, on to the next one. As a final checkbox after the previous one, add a final checkbox after the previous one with an ID attribute value of energetic. The name attribute should be the same as the previous checkboxes. Okay, Once again, I'll slide this to the right so that we have space to work with. All right, so we had an input. I want to give it an ID attribute of energetic. Of course, it's going to have a type of checkbox. And I want to give it a name property, a name attribute to the same value as the previous ones, so personality. And we are told to also add a label element to the right of the new checkbox with the text energetic. Okay, so we do that. Opening label tag, closing label tag. The text should be energetic. And then make sure to associate the label element with the new checkbox. So the way we do that is to add a for attribute. Okay, and the value of the for attribute should be the same as the value of this ID here. So we just copy it and then we paste. Okay, all right. Now let's test it out. So we have energetic. When we click on energetic, it checks this checkbox here. Okay, all right. Okay, so for the last step in this video, let's see what we are supposed to do. Like radio buttons, form data for selected checkboxes are name value attribute pair. While the value attribute is optional, it's best practice to include it with any checkboxes or radio buttons on the page. Add a value attribute to each checkbox. For convenience, set each checkbox's value attribute to the same attribute as its ID attribute. Okay, so just as we did for the, let me slide this to the right so that we have space to work with. All right, now just as we did for the radio inputs, we gave them a value attribute. Okay, so you also want to give these checkbox inputs a value attribute. Once again, we can type at multiple places by pressing and holding Option on Mac and also press and hold Alt on Windows. Okay, so I want to click here, and click here. Again, on Mac, I'm pressing and holding Alt while I click at the point where I want to type. You can do the same on Windows with Alt. On Mac is press and hold Option. On Windows, press and hold Alt. Okay, so we want to add a value. Sorry, not value. Value equal to, and then our quotation. So the first value have the same value as the ID. So let me just copy 11 and I'll paste. Same for the second one. I'll just copy lazy and I'll paste it here. I'll also copy energetic from here and I'll paste it here. Okay. All right, so that's it for this one. We'll come back to continue, and then the next video will be the last one. So thanks for watching this one. Be sure to like and subscribe, and see you in the next one.